So, wow, it's July, and we're starting a brand new series through July. We're calling it 2020 Spirituality, which I love, especially since the Daily Word was all about vision, right? We're seeing clearly. So, what we're going to be exploring over the next month is how we can become more adept at seeing as God sees, so that we can enjoy life in all its fullness as a sacred adventure. This morning, what we're going to be looking at really is how things, stuff, can actually be a pathway into the sacred. I know that sounds kind of weird, right? Because usually if you think of stuff and materialism, that would be a distraction from what's most true about our spiritual dimension, the spiritual life. But what I hope to convince you of by the end of this talk is that actually, if we're willing to go more deeply, if we're really able to look beyond sort of the surface level of stuff, that actually things can be a really powerful touchstone for moving into that space of recognizing that everything in life is spiritual. So that's what we're about. Last week, you'll remember if you were here that I talked about Jonah, the guy that got swallowed by the whale. And I thought it was interesting that my focus was on Jonah's attitude before any of the whale stuff happened. And so I found the same thing is happening this week with a different story, one that is very familiar. I'm sure you all have heard of it and would be familiar with it. But I'm really wanting to look at sort of the front end of that story, at a piece of it that I think maybe we haven't recognized before, or maybe haven't sort of claimed before. So I'm going to start out reading the beginning of the story. It's the Samaritan woman at the well. You all remember that story where Jesus meets this woman at the well who's a Samaritan, which actually it was quite radical of him to engage her in conversation. First that she's a woman and that she's a Samaritan, and he was Jewish and he was a rabbi. And so there are all sorts of traditions that he was breaking just by engaging in that connection with her. But the upfront part that I want us to focus on here, because I think it might do us well to recognize that even in Jesus, there is this dimension of life that sometimes we may, in the song that Christina just sang for us, sometimes we may move into a space of not thinking we're good enough, or not thinking that we really have the capacity to be present in a spiritual way. And so I think this is a good perspective to view Jesus' work in. Around the Samaritan. So this is from John chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. Now, when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard Jesus is making and baptizing more disciples than John, although it was not Jesus himself, but his disciples who baptized, he left Judea and started back to Galilee. But he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a Samaritan city called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired out by his journey, was sitting by the well. It was about noon. What I love about that is it's so rare that we think about Jesus as being tired out, right? Jesus, the I am statements that we hear from Jesus are, I am the bread and the life. I am the door and the gate. I am the way and the truth. I am the light of the world. These sort of affirmations, these incredibly powerful statements of being that we know Jesus to make. And yet here we're seeing Jesus is sort of like, he's just tired. He's been traveling. It's a 6-day journey to move through Samaria to get to Galilee. It's a 6-day journey. It's all on foot. He's traveling with his disciples. He sent them on to go for food. And he's just taking time to sit at this well, this Jacob's well. And I don't know about you, but I'm at a space where I'm just feeling tired, I'm tired of the coronavirus stats every day. I'm tired of stay at home. I'm tired of hot dog burritos. That's kind of my go-to dinner. I'm tired of as Olga referred to in her beautiful prayer, I'm tired of the injustice that we see. It's all just very wearing. And so I think what this story offers us, if we dig into it a little more deeply, as a way to sort of be with that tiredness in the same way that Jesus was. You know, a sort of admitting that, yeah, that's a dynamic of what we're living in. That's a dynamic of the energy that we're about. And it doesn't have to be defeating. It doesn't have to be self-defeating. It's kind of an acknowledgement and a way to be present to what rejuvenates us, to what can move us into a space of claiming that greater sense and purpose of life. Yeah. So for Jesus and this woman at the well, I think she reminds him in some ways of what's really true. And in his teaching to her, I think that he actually is, it's one of those messages that he's sort of living out of his own heart, right? To be in that space of tired. I don't know about you, but when I'm tired, oh my gosh, I get kind of cranky. I'm usually hungry at the same time. And it's funny, even when I'm with family, if I make some sort of short remark, some remark out of anger, they'll like, get him food. He's got to be fed, which only makes me a little bit more angry, you know. But when I'm tired, I'm not operating at my best self, right? And so I'm called to go more deeply. And what Jesus' encounter with the Samaritan woman here at this well really calls us to explore, how is it that we're refreshed? How is it that we're renewed, right? What is it? Jesus says those who drink from the well that he offers will never thirst again, right? That's sort of the gist of this conversation. And so I think it calls us to really explore, what wells are we drinking by? What wells are we sitting by? Where are we going for renewal and refreshment? Because some are more effective at rejuvenation than others, right? I know Netflix is certainly a space where I can go and sort of just be. But I question whether or not maybe that's the coming apart in a way to just be with spirit, you know? And that's why I think this notion that we can find the sacred in the everyday. And it's not that we can't find sacred or deeper purpose in meeting or watching a movie. That's, you know, that can inspire us too. But it really is all about the attitude that we bring to it, right? And the things in our lives, like the wells in our lives, the ones that we connect with or resonate most deeply are the ones that, excuse me, the wells that serve us best are those that we can sort of see beyond the surface level dimension and have us connect to something maybe in our past, something maybe that reminds us of who we truly are, in a way that helps us be more present to the spiritual nature of all that is. Yeah. So just as an example, I brought a little, here's kind of a sacred object, and I need to switch around my screen so I can see whether or not this is in the screen. There, all right. So this is a goond bear, which I didn't know a lot about teddy bears before I got this, but apparently goond is kind of a thing. A goond bear is a thing. And it was given to me more than 15 years ago now by one of the sweetest, kindest people I have ever known in my life. And this is a woman that I feel I can say I knew her well. We talk several times a week, every single day. We work together, but only a handful of times did we ever meet. You know, I was working in Southern California and she was working up on the coast in the north side. And she just had this incredible capacity for love and compassion. And she also had one of the most challenging physical journeys through life of anyone that I'd ever known. She, a couple of times, had to deal with cancer, and it went into remission for a while. And then finally, the last bout with cancer was she transitioned, she moved on. But before she had left, she sent me this goond bear. And so for me, it's sort of become a touchstone. Whenever I need comforting, whenever I need to remember that that there is a deeper dimension to life than whatever the physicality of it might be, and that I have the capacity within me to bring forth the same kind of compassion and joy that this woman, Pat McCullough was her name, that Pat brought and shared with me over those many years when we worked together, mostly over the phone. And so the bear has kind of become a touchstone for me. I keep it on the head of my bed, and I use it there whenever I'm feeling uh, whenever I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. This bear is sort of my go-to thing. You know, it can take me into a deeper sense of self, a reminder that there's something greater, that there's something deeper. And I think all of us have those kinds of sacred objects in our lives, or at least we have the potential to see those objects in our lives as sacred objects. Yeah. Um, I want to share a reading. This is from a book called Spiritual Literacy. It's the inspiration for this series that we're doing. And the reading talks about an old battered chair. And since I would imagine most of us are sitting in chairs right now, it might be a way to sort of connect with, wow, even this chair that I give really no thought to has the capacity to remind me of a deeper level of being and purpose. So I'll just share this with you. It's not too awfully long. The battered old chair in which I'm sitting, I have owned this chair for more than 20 years, ever since I found it abandoned in an alley. At that time, I was a college student so poor that I could not afford to buy a chair at a secondhand store. Perhaps 70 years ago, a talented person sat down at a drafting table and worked hard to create its durable, elegant design. That person's effort and talent lives on in this chair, long after he or she has died. This chair has supported me through the writing of a senior thesis, a master's thesis, a doctoral dissertation, and 3 versions of this book, not to mention hundreds of professional reports. It has supported me while I've read countless books and magazines. I have sat comfortably in it while I laughed, cried, and rocked my babies to sleep. It has never required a repair, never frustrated me in any way. So I just love sort of the energy of gratitude that evokes, right? As we start to look at the things in our lives and the way in which they support us in our own becoming, and the way in which there's a deeper level of purpose beyond that surface level sitting at the well, right? But the deeper well that arises from within that reminds us who we truly are. So that's my invitation to you. Like right now, that's my invitation to you. I want you to look around wherever you're sitting and just pick up an object, whatever it is. I don't care if it's a pen. I don't care if it's a rock that you used in a ritual long before, if it's a file folder, whatever. If there's something that you can pick up and just hold in your hand, what I'd like to do is, as Christina prepares us for a time of meditation, just invite you to be fully present to the deeper purpose and meaning that that object has, the capacity that that object has to connect you to what is sacred and to deeper truth. Just invite you to become aware of whatever the object is that you've selected. And even if it feels like this was a random choice because this guy on a screen asked you to pick up this object, I invite you to just let go of any limitation that you might think or feel around that or believe around that, and just search for a deeper story. Because there is one. This object has arrived in your life to accomplish a deeper purpose, something beyond whatever its outer appearance or outer structure is. It has the capacity to support you in fulfilling a dream, in reminding you of your truest nature, and bringing you back to an awareness that you are more deeply connected to all that is than we are typically aware of. Most of us are typically aware of. So I invite you just to allow yourself to play. There's a story behind this object. Maybe it's a story about how it came to be in your space, how it came to be one of your belongings. Maybe it's a story of its origin. Maybe it's a story of what it has allowed you to accomplish and know. But as you rest in that deeper story, allow it to return you to an awareness that we can never be separate from anything. That every experience in our lives, that every object that we encounter connects us to a greater degree of being. And so I'd invite you now just to rest in a moment of silence and let that story, let that history, let that vision sort of play through your mind as we become aware that truly everything in life is sacred. And very gently, as we return our attention to the here and now, I would invite you to affirm that truly there is nothing that can be apart from God. Even in challenges, there is a possibility and a potential that arises out of the love and the greatness of God. Our truest nature is that we are that Christ presence. And as we allow ourselves to recognize that, to claim that, then we can move through life with a greater sense of purpose and a greater awareness of who we truly are. So it is, and so we let it be. Amen. 2, 1. Hey, thanks for watching this YouTube video. If Unity's message of positive spiritual living resonates with you, I hope you'll subscribe to our channel so you can stay up to date on other lessons as we post them. Also, if you're able to support us financially in the work that we do in the world, please check below for contact information. You can visit our website, find more about what programming we offer, as well as how to give. Blessings.